share my screen. But good afternoon, everyone. Well, barely afternoon, but noon. My name is Lei. I'm the Community Volunteer Ambassador for the Santa Monica Mountains National Recreation Area. And right now we are going to go over the consent statement. And as a visible disclosure, we'd like to inform any participants that any and all of the Zoom series is and will be recorded. The purpose of this is to provide the Zoom series to those who participated or missed out on the session. It is also provided to the information for participants to refer back to. In addition to the visible disclosure, this statement will be orally stated at the beginning of each Zoom series like I am right now. And I'm going to stop sharing and hand it off to Dawn.
Good morning, I guess good noon, everyone.
Good noon.
Dawn Endicott down here in San National Monument. And the peregrines we're going to see all are from this local area. I usually give this as a campfire talk, or it's one of several campfire talks I give for state parks. And I want to do a first check, is sound okay? We had some issues earlier.
We have a lot of people saying that you're a little bit low or we can barely hear you.
Okay, I'm not sure how we're going to do that because I'm literally this far from the microphone.
Just gotta everyone has to put their volume on full blast.
Okay, I will try to be real loud then. So first, by way of introduction, when I give these talks to school kids, I introduce Perry. Oops, I'm going to turn off my background. Hold on. Let's do virtual background. None. So here's Perry. And Perry is about the size of a crow. Let's get back, Perry. I can't figure out mirror image here. Sorry about that. So this is Perry. And size of a crow. We're going to talk a little bit about their life history, their population, severe population declines when I was a young person, and a little bit about their recovery. And of course, there'll be lots of photos and some videos at the end. The way we set it up was, I guess you can use chat for asking questions, and I'll be around as long as anyone is interested in asking questions. So what I'm going to do now is start my presentation. And the problem is I have to go down and toggle something on my computer. So 1 second. Let's go here and share. This is a lot easier in a campfire setting. Share screen. There's the presentation. So hopefully you can see the PowerPoint. Is that a thumbs up? And I have to go adjust something here. So do we have it full size? All right, so here we go. Peregrine falcon, I say the fastest animal in the world, and we'll see why. Next up, I want to go. This is a little video clip taken at the end of May. This is taken from the nest where we were retrieving the eyases, the chicks, for banding. Our cliff is about 400 feet above the water, so a good protective place. So how about some facts? Here we go. I'm going to drag this over here. So peregrine means a wanderer. They live on every continent. They're a bird hunter primarily, although I have seen them catch, at least in one instance, a wood rat. They can dive at speeds of over 200 miles an hour. So that's where they get the speed record. And as I think most of you know, recovered from near extinction in the 1960s. As I mentioned, they're pretty much worldwide. They do migrate. Some of them make a 15,000-mile annual round trip. Here in Southern California, our birds are pretty much resident, and they're primarily along the coast. I already mentioned about the size of a crow. So wingspan 3 feet or so. Females are larger than the males. The females are called falcons. The males are called tercels to convey that third smaller size. And we can see that weight difference there. Sharp pointed wings, it's pretty easy to detect a falcon. Think kestrels, prairie falcons, of course, our peregrine topic today. Very sleek aerodynamically, and they have some other adaptations that help them cope with that speed. Long, sharp talons. This is not our Cabrillo pair. This is about 2 miles north, another nest I monitor. And
the park's doing a Zoom.
Was there a question? Nope, okay, carry on. So they actually use those toes to make the kill. They're not generally catching them with their beaks. They'll swipe at it, and that kills the birds almost instantly, then grab them. And they have different techniques, but that's the primary one. They have a Malar Stripe, very characteristic under the eye. Same purpose that football players, baseball players put that black under their eyes. It reduces the glare from the sunlight. Their vision is incredible. I will share a little bit some photos from this last Thursday showing least terns and snowy plovers. And we actually had to remove and transport a pair of peregrines that were keeping an eye on them from downtown San Diego and flying over daily to get a little meal harvest, which is not good, but incredible vision. So easily see prey a mile or more away. They have 2 adaptations. Well, they have multiple, but the toenail tooth helps with the killing, the way that digs in often into the neck of the prey, and the tubercule. The tubercule, here's another photo from a museum specimen that basically acts in the same way that nestle in front of a jet engine. It slows down the air. If they didn't have something to reduce the air pressure in at 200 miles an hour, their lungs would basically explode. So that's another adaptation to a life at high speed. Nictitating membrane, third eyelid. I think all birds have them, but it helps protect them, the eye at high speed. We'll talk a little bit about hunting. So although they can dive from 200 miles an hour, and that's one of the primary ways they hunt, they'll soar very high up into the sky and then dive down. So they're coming from above, the birds aren't looking in that direction, and dive down and hit them. However, where I am, most of the kills are horizontal, and then the birds are flying about 60 miles an hour, often tag teaming. So at nesting time, the female or the male, it's often the male that scrambles first because he's on the lookout, and they'll tag team, and it usually takes about 15 seconds max before they catch what they're after. During the mating season, beforehand, during courting, the male will catch prey and in a ritual fashion present it to the female as a prey exchange, demonstrating his hunting skill and ability to provide for her, because once she's on the nest, that's where she stays, and he's going to be bringing food to her and bringing food to the chicks and her. So he's got a lot of hunting to do this time of year, well, in the spring. And the rest of the year, they're pretty much independent on their own. Courtship and mating, I mentioned the prey exchange. That's the photo on the lower left. So the male, the upper bird has the prey held in its beak, and the female comes up underneath, talons up underneath, and takes a hand off. The photo on the larger photo, that's the female on the lower right, male, this is right after mating. Again, this location is about 400 feet, not quite straight up. So all of the photos you see are taken from sea level. And I'm monitoring usually once or twice a week, and I need minus tides. So it's a little bit of a challenge getting these kinds of photos, but always rewarding. Oh, I should say mating isn't a one-shot deal. It'll take place maybe over a week. And then we have eggs. This is the other pair I keep track of, and it has a rather different vantage point. So I can actually look at the nest from above horizontally. I'd say it's about 150 feet away. And you can see this. This is a replica egg, so just for size. It's pretty much the same size as a chicken egg, but obviously well camouflaged. These replicas were made when we were helping, when teams were helping to restore peregrines. Sometimes they would harvest the actual egg, take those for incubation, remote incubation, and then the females would double clutch. So it was a way to increase the number of peregrines on the pipeline. Usually 3 to 4 eggs. Our peregrines lay in February and March, and we usually right now they've fledged, so we have youngsters flying around. This is what the chicks look like at about 20 days of age, and completely dependent. They hatch about 31 days. So one of my jobs is to figure out, even though I can't see them, one, when eggs were laid, then starts the timer, when did they likely hatch? And then we like to band about the age of 20 to 21 days. They're big enough to be, I mean, they're, I guess, robust, they're sturdy animals, and they're not yet ready to depart, like jump off the cliff while we're trying to harness them in, corral them, I guess, and do the banding. So here's a little video. They're pretty noisy at this age. And by the time they get to be ready to fledge, that little ledge is pretty full of peregrines because they got mom who takes breaks and then four youngsters. This was 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Last year, unfortunately, we had a nest failure. This year we had 3. And I mentioned it's the life on the ledge. So that's the whole nest. They don't actually make a nest. It's just a flat place, sheltered. And if you jumped off, you'd go literally 400 feet, hit the rocks, and at high tide, you'd be in the water. Monitoring, again, spotting scopes. That's the lower right picture shows the context. So often I'm starting to get wet by the end of a monitoring session. And the little enclosure shows I monitor, I have 4 zones I keep track of and make in my logs, where were they, what time, and that helps you relocate them when you return because they tend to use the same perches. And let's go here. So banding. So banding is not done for all peregrines. Ours have been banded starting in 2014. I've already mentioned the 20 to 21 days. They get a federal band, which is silver, has a serial number that's unique to them. And then the other leg gets a colored band, and those are bands that we can identify from a distance to try to help tell who's who. This is a little bit about what it looks like. In our situation, we bring the chicks up off the cliff and band them up top and then return. So we get lots of attention from the mother, although we haven't had any direct contact yet. But anyway, that's what the banding looks like. it's a technical operation. You can see lower left, that's Diego rappelling into the cliff ledge. Now you might wonder why we band. Here are some photos I took last Thursday. The banding is in conjunction with a project jointly with Park Service, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and the Navy. And the issue is we have the endangered California least tern that's nesting within a little over 2 miles of where the peregrines are. And at this time of year, we have predation issues with both peregrines, great blue herons. Last week we were seeing possum tracks. So it's kind of open season on our lovely little least terns. The one in the top is that's less than a day from hatch, and by the second day they're running around like the one on the lower right. Their nests are just basically little divots in the sand, so not much protection, very exposed. In addition to the least terns, we also have snowy plovers. This was also on Thursday. See this little guy on the upper right with a band. So we're banding to find out what's going on with the plovers and especially the least terns. If we recover a band in a nest, okay, that's a bad sign. That bird has a prey image for the birds we want to protect. And the bands on the peregrines help us identify repeat offenders. So if we can spot a predation going on and get the band ID, and we know where that peregrine is coming from, we can set up live traps. In fact, this just happened last week. We had one that had harvested, they had a pair over in downtown San Diego, and they were making a beeline over here. They weren't banded, but live trapped them, banded, found that they were coming back, and they got free transportation to Northern Oregon last week to keep them out of the least tern area. So fledglings are this beautiful chocolate brown with sort of a orangish tinge, have flecking on the breasts. They learn to fly about 42 to 46 days after hatching. They're already adult size, but they're going to be dependent on their parents for food for easily up to 2 months. Here are some fledglings learning to fly. You can see adult size, sometimes just the whole idea of getting up in the air. It's natural to them, but some of them are a little slower than others. And the lower right shows they do the same kind of tag teaming that the adults do. So they're pretty hardwired for that. Here's some other views of fledglings. This one on the upper left, that was a cute one. He did not, I guess that's a she, did not, had just fledged and flown down to this rock this particular day and couldn't figure out how to get back up at that time. And siblings kept coming by and landing next to her, encouraging her. She finally did. And then you can see some of the aerials there in front of the cliff face. Under ideal conditions, peregrines can live 12 to 15 years. But as you can see, first year survival is less than a third. So it's not so easy learning to be an aerial hunter. And sometimes things don't work out for the parents either. This was last year. I had seen very unusual behavior. A strange female, actually a juvenile, had moved in. The male kept trying to chase it out. What we found on banding day was our adult female had been killed just short of when the eggs would hatch. So we recovered her band, and those were the unhatched eggs. We really like to know what's going on with the peregrines. When do things happen? By the way, we suspect this was a great horned owl predation. Not sure. Most of the carcass had been scavenged by the time we got there, but there are great horned owls in the area. And this shows how old the chicks were. This was a necropsy done by the San Diego Zoo. And actually, the San Diego Zoo Global is part of the same project. So they're the ones that are over banding the plovers and the least terns. So this year, good news, we have a new mate. This is an unbanded female, probably a second-year female. And upper left, actually, the lower left photos are of her. You can see them mating. This was back in early April. And then the male on the upper right. So same male has been there for all 5 years, 98M. And we got to do some more banding. And we had 3 chicks, 1 egg did not hatch. You can see at this age, the juveniles, they're just starting to get those primary feathers, the shafts growing, amazing blue color, and a lot of racket. So back on 11 June, so this was later than normal. We had our birds finally fledging. So we can see female on the left, male on the right. The males are smaller and they tend to learn to fly sooner. They're also, after they become adults, the males are more maneuverable. They're really an acrobatic flyer. And this was the first day of flying for our new male 38AK. So however, he was a beggar. Far left, he's harassing mom for food. On the far right, same thing, different ledge. And you can see the brown plumage. You can actually see underneath some of them how the feathers are still coming in. But still depending on parents. So this is a prey exchange. Male, it's a smaller bird giving the prey to the female and female take it into the nest on the lower right with 2 hungry chicks apparent there. History of nesting, or at least banding. I mentioned that 2014 was the first year. It was done by Fish and Wildlife at that time. Now it's the joint effort. And the only year that we did not have success was last year. Loss and recovery. I think many of us can remember when peregrines were truly rare. In fact, I think I didn't see my first one until I was probably in my 30s. It was a juvenile here in San Diego. I happened to see at the San Diego River outlet. DDT was the main problem. So we went from nearly 4,000 breeding pairs to almost none. I think California, the number I saw got down to less than 5. So this is a whole national average, 324. So that's an over 90% reduction. Banned DDT in 1972. Very proactive efforts to bring the peregrines back. I already mentioned some about using replica eggs and double clutching. Fully engaged the climbing community. They helped quite a bit with those efforts. And good news, by 1999, they were able to be delisted. So a real success story. They're thriving these days in California. The latest statistics I could find were 400 breeding pairs. Here in San Diego, we have at least 15. They're pretty much all along the coast. Trying to think in our area. I also do some monitoring periodically at Yosemite. Of course, that's not on the coast, and they have a pretty robust population of peregrines as well. I'm not sure if anyone is on from Channel Islands, but they have come back to the Channel Islands as well. Territories or areas that are semi-protected by an individual peregrine, and nesting in 27 of those 45 potential areas. And with that, we can do some questions now. I also have some videos to share with you, but I'm going to pop off the screen so that we can share those subsequently. So stop share. And that was a pretty quick pass through, but I wanted to make sure there was ample time for questions and for videos. So Rasa, are you the one who's doing the?
Yeah, there's no questions in the chat box. So if anybody has any questions.
I was able to get a question. Sometimes whenever people type in the chat, it goes automatically just to the host because you can send private messages. So one of the questions I have here is, how do they avoid injury while having 60 plus miles per hour impact?
Ooh, that's a good question. I haven't gotten that question before. Well, I guess the momentum is in their favor. They don't actually hit it with their body; they swipe it with the toe. So sometimes you'll see the swipe, and then the bird starts to fall, and then the peregrine just picks it up. So yeah, I don't know if like other birds, there's some cushioning in the skull. The adaptations that I'm aware of have mostly to do with how they cope with speed. But great question. I'll have to research that one. Okay, that it?
That was the only chat question. Does anyone want to ask a question directly?
I'm fine with that. I have 5 videos that I can share, and maybe that'll bring some more up. And I can stick around as long as you care to. So shall we do that?
Sounds good.
Okay, the first is it'll repeat some of the information. So let's get this going. It should be going momentarily. It hasn't started mine yet. Don't worry, we go.
When I Googled the fast.
And now let's go to share. Might have to turn down your sound because it's going to be full volume.
This animal, this is what I got. A cheetah. A cheetah. A little mammal bias, maybe. The truly fastest animal on Earth has a max speed 3 times greater than the cheetah. Peregrine falcons can leisurely cruise through the sky between 40 and 60 miles per hour, but when they're diving toward their prey, they can reach speeds over 200 miles per hour. That comes out to 293 feet per second. It's like flying the length of a football field in 1.2 seconds, or the length of this DC block. So how is it even possible for peregrines to dive this fast? A peregrine falcon is around the size of a crow, weighing between 1 and 3 pounds with a wingspan up to 3.6 feet. They prey on other birds by dive bombing them, snatching them midair. The first thing you see when a peregrine goes into its dive, also called a stoop, is their bullet-shaped body. Notice how the peregrine tucks in its feet and sweeps back its tail and wings. This streamlined figure reduces wind turbulence, maximizes maneuverability, lift, and speed as it cuts through the air. It wouldn't be able to do this nearly as efficiently if it had broad wings, like a hawk or an owl. But the peregrine's wings are pointed and angled back. And because of its stiff, unslotted feathers, it experiences less drag. The wind would pull on these feathers on other birds. Peregrines also have a large keel, that's the breastbone. A bigger keel supports stronger chest muscles. Acute vision allows them to spot prey a mile away. The nictitating membrane, or their eyelid, helps to maintain their vision in their high-speed dives. And the secretory gland keeps their corneas from drying out because of all that wind. But none of this would be possible if the peregrine couldn't breathe. The airspeeds that peregrine falcons experience while diving would make it impossible for most animals to breathe, but they have a bone in their nostrils to slow down the airflow. They also have robust hearts that beat around 600 to 900 beats per minute. All birds have a vastly more efficient respiratory system than mammals. Then, to finally catch her prey, the peregrine is pulling around 25 Gs coming out of the stoop. Compare that to an F-16 fighter pilot who endures up to 9 Gs during some maneuvers. On speed alone, peregrines are formidable birds of prey, but it isn't their only adaptation of note. Footage from our friends at BBC Earth shows where this wanderer has made its mark in some unexpected places. After a sharp recovery from near extinction in North America, bustling cities with soaring skyscrapers and towering cathedrals have become mini peregrines' new kingdom. A plentiful hunting ground with high
video number 1. And now we'll try another one. Let's go here. This is a series that are some scenes from our nearby Torrey Pines State Beach. And I won't show all of it, but it's interesting to see how defensive they are around nesting time. So I'm going to share that. Share screen.
Just south of LA, the cliffs are home to the fastest animal on Earth. A living missile, the Peregrine Falcon. Her eyesight is so sharp, she can pick out prey more than a kilometer away. The size of a crow, speed is her weapon. With her wings tucked in, she dives at speeds of 300 kilometers per hour. A kill in midair. Her chicks beg constantly for food. But she is torn between feeding hungry mouths and guarding the nest. Anything that passes too close, she views as a threat. Five times her body weight, the brown pelicans ignore her warnings. A dangerous mistake. She scrambles to intercept. A yank on the face throws the hapless pelican off balance. One down. She circles back for the rest. A skillful bill flick takes care of another. But once she's seeing off the pelicans,
All right, so you saw pelicans, which are obviously not very aggressive birds. Peregrines also defend their territories from bald eagles, hawks, you name it, and they're the top fighters. So anytime there's nesting going on, it's a very lively time for all the neighbors. Next up, I'm going to show you one that was produced by Cabrillo. Let's go here. Sorry, I'm trying to get to the right screen. Go here.
The mission of the National Park Service. Is to protect the natural resources of the national park system for the enjoyment, education, and inspiration of this and future generations. In the management of ecosystems, conflicts between species often arise. Here at Cabrillo National Monument, we're cooperating with our partners to extend the benefits of natural resource conservation. I'm Keith Lombardo, Chief of Resource Management and Science at Cabrillo National Monument in San Diego. Here at Peregrine Falcons, we're found nesting on adjacent native property. They frequently use the park to forage for food, but they're also suspected to be preying upon a nearby colony of these terns and endangered species. To resolve this complex issue, we work with Navy biologists and the
chosen nest sites to ban chicks. And what I've found is if you're able to control the most aggressive and largest chick, all the other chicks become completely docile. And to have something come into the nest site that's much larger than their mom, that's actually holding them and grabbing them, it scares them. They think I'm going to eat them. My name is G. Pagel, and I work as a reprocologist for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I ban birds in general to try and figure out more of the life history of peregrine falcons. For an ecosystem, we have predators that are on the ground and we have predators that are in the air. A peregrine's role is to kill birds. By killing other birds, it's taking out birds that may be diseased or sick, or in peregrines, sometimes they'll take very healthy birds.
Since its listing as an endangered species in 1972, California bee's tern colonies have shown signs of recovery. However, in the past decade, the population has begun to crash.
Terns are now restricted to small postage stamps of habitat where they only may have a couple acres where they have their nests. And because of terns being concentrated in a small area, it makes it more prevalent as a feeding area for those predators that are going to be in the ecosystem anyway. So if we have a situation where a peregrine is a transgressor, we know that that peregrine is eating a lot of these terns. That bird will be captured humanely. It will be whisked away to Northern California as far as we can take it, and it will be released within 24 to 48 hours of capture. Some of them do come back. We know that peregrine falcons have returned back to Southern California. But what we've also found is, at least for the few birds that we've captured, those birds don't tend to go back and do depredatory activities at a tern colony. Peregrine falcons have recovered from the brink of extinction. During my short 30-year career, it's gone from, say, for example, in California, where we had just a couple dozen pair, to now where we have an estimated almost 300 pair of peregrines. What you have here on the National Monument is a source nest where you have a great pair of parents, where you have clean food, you have a place where it's safe, where the birds can nest, where people aren't going to disturb, and you have an area where the birds are going to disperse from. They may go to Mexico, they may go out to the Channel Islands, they may go north along the coast, but they will help maintain that population. Being a peregrine is not easy. When you're diving at speeds up to 240 miles an hour, you can make mistakes. So in order to have a healthy population, you need to have a lot of peregrines that are still produced in order to maintain that population.
All right, that video is about 4 years old. I think Keith has moved on and is now working for the region, so some of you may have come across him. Let me show you two final things. The next one is a video of a female. This is another peregrine pair. They're about less than 2 miles from the ones you've been seeing. And this shows activity in the nest. This was
Right. I'm looking at my settings again.
I'm sorry, what was that? Let's see. I gotta push here. One. Go here. And share. These chicks are about 13 days old, pretty helpless. That noise is from the wind. It's right above the surf zone. And somebody was left out. call that quits on that. And then the last one I have will just show you that what it looks like when they're just learning to fly. So this was about, let's see, when was this? It was, I think, 4 weeks ago. Oops, hold on. Gotta share it. This is our last video. And we'll, and we'll call it quits with that. So that pretty much concludes the presentation. So again, subject to your questions or anything to do with peregrines or least terns or
Lade,
what?
you said there was another question?
Yes. So the question is, are monitoring techniques different for birds in urban settings?
What we do is the same activity. So it's usually, you know, you're sitting for long periods of time. Binoculars or spotting scope primarily, note taking, and learning the behavior for the particular birds that you're watching. Some of the areas or urban areas are a little challenging. We just banded a pair in Mission Valley that took up residency outside a hotel bedroom window. So there, you're sitting trying to not be conspicuous, yet there are cars driving by. There's a freeway between where you're watching them and your position. Contrast that with that, for Cabrillo, I've got to dodge the tides. I really need a minus tide or maybe a plus half foot. And then, you know, you might get wet and you're dodging the surf chasing you up against the cliff. In Yosemite, it's mostly a case of long hikes. You know, the pair that's on the backside of Half Dome, you know, that's a 2+ hour hike in and 2+ hour hike out. But I mean, what a great setting. So, but no, the actual technique of monitoring is pretty much the same. Great question.
Any other questions from anybody?
Do you have
Somebody listed that
peregrines?
there's one in Woodland Hills. Do you have any other in the LA area?
Well, actually, I was going to ask you guys from, you know, there must be some near the coast in Santa Monica.
An easy place to find peregrines is at Point Fermin Park in San Pedro. There's a nice walkway along there. You can walk along the top of the cliffs and see them flying by. They fly by at eye level. It's really a pretty cool place to find them. That's where this guy was.
They nesting there?
Yes. And I only know that because photographers have, in my opinion, not done the right thing and gone down and taken pictures of them nesting and eggs and giving birth and all sorts of things.
Oh dear. Yeah, I know the Torrey Pines has a pair that I've never gone. I've watched them from the beach below, but I've heard photographers lining up. The good news is where we have, I mean, it's off limits, so there's no one there, and you feel pretty comfortable. One thing I didn't mention earlier, so even though the birds are 400+ feet away, I always go to the same place. That's called the observation point for consistency. I always wear the same clothes. I wear the same hat, and I'm basically still there. I'm trying to make them as comfortable as possible so they don't break up their routine. I'm there as an observer. I just want to see what's going on. I certainly don't want to interfere. And Carrie, you're right. The photography situation can really get out of hand.
It's the most difficult thing, you know, being an ethical wildlife photographer, unfortunately puts you in a small category. Then it's just, it's gotten so popular, and, you know, cameras and lenses are so good these days that once the word gets out, it's just pretty crazy. I mean, I've been admin and moderator on a couple of really large bird photography and wildlife photography groups, and they have strict rules about not revealing locations where photos are taken. And that's exactly why. I had a real problem with the snow owls a couple of years ago, when there was a huge proliferation of snowy owls, and people just went nuts. They were tromping all over private property and all kinds of crazy things. And it was because their wintering grounds had gone so far south that they were in like the northern US now. People didn't have to go all the way to up into BC and Alaska to find them. It's just, it's a two-edged sword. Like, everybody wants to know where they can find the birds, but once you get a bunch of crazy people running around, it's not a good thing.
Is there anyone here from Channel Islands? My reports are several years old, but again, 27 nesting arrangements, so I would think they would be doing pretty well out there.
I don't know if it's a permanent or a consistent nesting or even hunting area, but Point Doom has had them in Malibu near Zuma Beach.
Right. In fact, I can see them almost anytime. If you go to Mugu Rock and just look up the cliffs on the other side of the road, they're up there all the time. People just don't know they're there, fortunately.
Does anybody know if they've been found at the Pinnacles National Park up around Central California? I know there's condors up there.
Yeah, there are condors and eagles. I go up there for bats, actually, to record bats, but I'm not sure. I'll have to look that one up. Great question.
I think I have heard that there are some up there. I think I remember hearing a talk when I was up at Golden Gate. I think I remember hearing them talk about having peregrines at Pinnacles. And there was some issues because of rock climbers and peregrines nesting sites.
And how do they get along with condors if they're in the same place?
Doubt that there's any conflict. The issue with peregrines expanding their areas to some, historic regions is they tend to displace prairie falcons. So we have prairie falcons in the desert. We have peregrines on the coast, and in our mountains here, that's the Peninsula Range. They're sort of both there, but the peregrines are tending to displace the prairies. They're more aggressive birds. And so when you've got both, the prairies tend to depart and head even farther into the desert. So Pinnacles would probably be a boundary between those two, but I'll have to look that up.
Is there an issue with kestrels?
Kestrels are pretty widespread, yeah.
Yeah, but do the peregrines and the kestrels keep their distance, or are there territorial issues?
I don't think they compete for the same foods, and I've seen them adjacent to each other, so I think there's not a problem. I don't know that for sure. And that's a great point. Kestrels are our smallest falcon. And when I've seen kestrels, they're often going, kestrels will go for large insects. Kestrels will go for field mice, lizards. I mean, they're after much smaller critters. Peregrines at one time and in some places still were called duck hawks. The city peregrines tend to specialize in pigeons, rock doves, I mean domestic pigeons. So that's a bigger prey item than a kestrel. So I don't know, maybe they catch kestrels. I haven't seen that.
The peregrines are actually more widespread than a lot of people realize. A few years ago, I watched one fly over Malibu Creek State Park, and it was a pretty cool thing to see.
Yeah, the first one I saw was a juvenile, like I said, at the San Diego River channel. So if some of you visited here, that's a great birding spot. And it was, must have been the summer around twilight. I hadn't seen a peregrine, gosh, in forever. It was a juvie. It made a couple of passes by me, but what I remember most was it raised all hell with every bird that was out on the tidal flats. It was just this huge scramble. I don't think it had learned how to hunt that well yet, so nothing died. No wildlife was injured in this documentary, but yeah, they're all up and down the coast. I've seen them. We saw the brown pelicans being attacked by the Tory peregrine mother. I've seen them do that off Point Loma, but not drive them to the water. I've seen them take after ospreys, but it's all different.
We lost you.
Don, you still there? He did freeze. So I'm reading the chats. For those of you who couldn't hear, I hope you could hear me. Lei has been recording the session and she has confirmed that both audio and video were working perfectly for her. So once I download this session, I should be able to upload it to our Sammo Funds YouTube channel, and you could watch in full audio there in case you had any audio issues during this session. So sorry, Don, I was just filling in the space while we're waiting for you to come back. But go ahead.
Nope, that's all I had. I've just passed along. If you have additional questions, you can feel free to shoot those to Lei, and I can respond via email.
Awesome. Thank you, Don, so much.
I did do a quick search, and I did see listed on Pinnacles National Park that they do have a mix of prairie and peregrine falcons nesting. So
right.
I didn't know that about the prairies. So cool.
A friend of mine, a photographer friend, has sent recently pictures from Pinnacles of peregrines. So pretty cool to see.
Yeah, I actually got to go out with them and band some of the, very similar to what you did, Don. When I worked at Pinnacles, we went out and we banned the prairie falcons. Same process that you explained, and it was really cool to go up in the nests and see them.
These are really cool looking birds. They're more subtle. That you know, paler coloration. I've seen them out in Anza Borrego. I was hiking in the Badlands a few years ago at sunrise, and there were two of them, and there wasn't a stitch of vegetation anywhere. And still they were thriving on whatever they could find. I imagine kangaroo rats and such. They're less a bird hunter than a ground hunter. But yeah, prairies are very cool as well. It's great to hear that you were banding up at Pinnacles. I'll have to find out more about that. All right.
All right. Thank you again, Don, so much.
Everyone have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too. Bye. Bye, everybody. We'll keep an eye out on the Sammo Fun YouTube channel, and this video should be up sometime Monday or Tuesday, okay?
Okay.
All right. Take care. Bye.
All right.